It's about Morrissey. You ready?
What's up, YouTube?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's good.
What's up, YouTube? Hello. So I'm going to do a reaction to a Morrissey interview. Morrissey, of course, the lead singer of the Smiths, split up in about '87, I think. And I'm sort of doing this because balance, really, because I have laughed at and made smart aleck comments about Marquis Smith and who else? Shane McGowan out of the Pogues, and that twat out of Baby Shambles. Some people don't like it, and that's fine. I don't care, because at least they're watching it. So, something. So I'm going to do Morrissey because I used to love Morrissey, and I still love the music, the Smiths, and his solo stuff is actually very good. So let's dive into a lovely little interview with lovely little Morrissey, who really is, well, you'll see. Brilliant. Very old interview, this, 1985, when the Smiths were still together. Studio One, I don't know what that is, but it's some sort of Channel 4 thing, with Muriel Gray, who was, of course, on the Tube, and all those sort of muso early Channel 4 type shows.
And this is it, nosing around. Yeah, N-O-Z, Z for that. It's a programme for young adults, made by young adults, and concentrating on all the subjects that young adults are interested in, like unemployment. Maggie!
So let's dive in to this lovely thing.
Well, welcome to another Studio One, and that, of course, is the very wonderful Smiths, taken from an old Tube session. And we have Morrissey in the studio with us, which is great. Morrissey, thanks for coming.
It's nice to be here.
It's been an incredible success story for the Smiths.
He's already looking smug. Nice to hear. I'm famous, don't you know?
Especially over the last year. I mean, just from becoming a cult band, you're now huge. You're topping every poll there is, practically in all the music press. Are you astonished by it or delighted?
I think delighted, because we expected it. We had very strong ideals and very high hopes.
We expected
and we couldn't really consider failure, which a lot of people think is arrogance, but it's not. We were just very sure of what we wanted to do. And I think when you're really sure of what you want to do, you can do it.
Why do you think people do accuse you of arrogance? Because I know the music press have got a really funny tack towards you.
Yes, they do. I think this again sounds arrogant, but I think they probably feel that I'm somewhat too clever to do what I do, because, which sounds like absolute arrogance, but...
3 times he said it now.
Many journalists are really used to people who are making records having a very clear statements and very clear vision of where they want to go. It's very unusual, and when it happens, it makes people uneasy.
Because the old theory of most rock journalists being failed musicians is another one, isn't it?
It's absolutely true. I find it's absolutely true.
Because a lot of your lyrics are, as they say as well, very clever. Do you think they're just annoyed that they didn't write them?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. It makes me sad because...
He does think that.
It's true, and it makes me sad because I think there's so many people involved in music who really don't consider it to be an art form, and they get quite shocked when something serious comes along. And I think
it's very David Brent, isn't it? It's like I'm such a good boss, and it's such a shame that people don't come to me so I can share my experience.
It's really sad.
Now your songs are very serious,
and it makes me sad because I think there's so many people involved in music who really don't consider it to be an art form.
Yeah.
And they get quite shocked when something serious comes along. And I think that's really sad.
Now, your songs are very serious, and the lyrics are all to do with pain. At least that's the way it seems to me. Did you have a very painful youth?
Yes, I think I did, and yes, I most certainly did. And it becomes difficult to talk about it because people think it's your total standpoint, and you're trapped in your adolescence, and here I am plunging towards 26, yet I'm still talking about those times. I'm not really encased in that period, but it was painful. I mean, it was very troublesome, and I can't really forget it.
Are you a pessimist or an optimist?
I think I'm an optimist because I'm here and I'm doing this. I think if I was a total pessimist, I would never have bothered. I would have just, you know, stayed in bed and didn't bother to do anything. So I think I'm an optimist.
And he did actually stay in bed for a long time. He's also done a song about called "I Stayed in Bed Today" or something. He did stay in bed when he originally failed to get anywhere, and apparently he got very depressed and stayed in bed for about 3 weeks. So there you go.
You're getting quite a big chance now, because you've got such an enormous amount of people who worship the Smiths, to make very, very good points, especially with the Meet His Murder album. Now, do you have some sense of responsibility from that point, because people really are listening to what you're saying?
Yes, I think so, but it's good to have that sense of responsibility. I want it. I mean, if the Smiths were simply just another pop group, there'd be no point, really, because anybody can do that. It's easy. So it's really quite important to have a particularly precious platform, and for people to see you in a particular way. There are problems. We still find it quite difficult to get daytime national airplay because of that reason. But mostly it's quite gratifying.
Why did the Meet His Murder thing come about? I mean, I realise you're a vegetarian and have been for some years, but why do you feel the necessity to get on a soapbox lyrically?
Well, because this is something which has never been covered, and never been covered certainly in music, or at any rate successfully. No,
they are the first people who've ever tackled this issue. I mean, I'm being very sarcastic. Yeah, it's interesting because obviously now veganism, vegetarianism, all of that stuff is absolutely front and centre, isn't it? It's quite funny that he's saying it's never been covered and no one ever talks about it. It shows amazingly, you know, 1985 is not that long ago.
And it's something that gets no national attention whatsoever. Everybody's politically aware, there are benefit concerts, there are benefit records, etc. But this is something that people never ever talk about, and I felt that since there were so many people who felt strongly about it, that it really should have its place in music.
Right, well, let's have a look at it. This is Meet His Murder.
Follow me, guys. I'll find us a shortcut.
That is not Meet His Murder, is it?
Come on, Sergey, keep up.
It's a special video. Oh, right.
Everyone could be human crime. Closer comes the screaming knife. This beautiful creature must die. This beautiful creature must die. A death.
Apparently they actually butchered those cows specifically for the video, which, you know, shows real commitment.
For no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And the flesh you so fancifully fry is not succulent, tasty or kind. It's death for no reason, and death for no reason is murder. And the card that you call a smile, it is murder. And the turkey you deftly
I bet this struggled on MTV, this video.
Well, that's the Smiths track.
Nice
Meet His
bit of
Murder,
beef
obviously,
there.
which put some rather disturbing images over. Now, I know vegetarianism is thought to be a good thing, but isn't it mankind being a little vain to think that we're not part of the food chain? Do you see what I mean? Every animal has to kill to live, even if it's just plants.
Animals do, human beings don't. It's
Some of those
unnecessary.
plants are
People
vicious.
survive without meat. it's just really ignorance, I think, and certain... people eat meat, I think, for negative reasons.
What do you think those reasons are?
They just really can't be bothered to think about animal cruelty, or they can't be bothered to think of another diet. I mean, it's too much trouble for people to really sit down and think, well, if I didn't eat this, what could I possibly eat? People just, you know, food is just this ritual. Breakfast, it's toast, dinner, it's meat, and whatever. So it's just really, people have to be made aware of the situation, really. Most people don't know any details about vegetarianism or animal slaughter.
It's always been associated with a young person's thing, vegetarianism anyway, hasn't it? And back in the 60s as well.
Yes.
Not anymore.
You're obviously still just appealing to young people, but how do you think you're going to get this over to the older generation?
Well, if the message can be really cemented within the younger generation, I think that's enough. Everything else should hopefully just come in time. But
well, he's actually completely, he's right there, because now just as many vegetarians are in their 50s, 60s as you know, young people. So well done, Morrissey. He made a good point, actually.
I think it's wishful thinking to try and do too much at once. So I know from the letters I receive hundreds of letters every single day from people who've said, we heard this record and now we're vegetarian. So it's a success.
Right, for the moment, Morrissey, thanks very much. I'll come back to you in part two. But first of all, we're going to see a recorded track. This is White China. Well, that was a big country, just like your shadow, and with no connection whatsoever, I'm glad to say. Morrissey is still here in the studio.
What is going on in the background? Just look at this.
Right, for the moment, Morrissey, thanks very much. I'll come back to you in part two. But first of all, we're going to see a recorded track. This is White China.
At the back there when it comes here.
Well, that was a big country, just like your shadow, and with no connection whatsoever, I'm glad to
say.
Morrissey
doing?
is still here in the studio.
They're dancing.
The other thing he had a reputation for a while back was criticising every other band in the music business. I mean, you haven't done that for a while. If you
they
lost
haven't really given me the chance for a long time. I think I've been black.
He's the Stuart Lee of the music world then, in that case. Criticising every other band. That's what Stuart Lee did. He criticises all the other comedians. And they do look similar as well.
Yes, I did that for a long time. I thought it was necessary. Well, everybody was, you know, slowly going to sleep towards the end of 1983, and I felt that they had to be woken up somehow. So.
Is it as bad now, do you think? I mean, does it still depress you, the things that are happening?
I think it's changed, but it's still quite glum, really. The old boy network is as strong as ever, and I think that's boring.
What do you mean, the old boy network in the music business?
I think we have our clump of people who will always be on television and who manipulate airwaves, etc.
Like who?
Well, I could name names, but it's proved in the past not to be very practical for me. I tend to meet people in corridors and studios, etc., and they're always taller than me. So.
Do you think things are going to change any? Because everyone's waiting for this enormous big sensation that's going to happen again, like the way punk did and everything. That hasn't yet, has it?
I don't know. I think it's difficult.
1985. What was the big thing that came along and changed everything in the music world? Probably dance music, actually. Yeah, and but that had already started with New Order. But Pump Up the Volume, about 1987, I think that came out. That was the start of a big revolution. And rap, of course.
I think doors are still firmly closed. And I think, I know that because the Smiths found it difficult in several areas, I felt that people were just unwilling to have change. And for instance, the Jesus and Mary Chain single never had one national daily airtime play. So that proves something.
Why do you think they're particularly anarchic? Do you think Jesus and Mary Chain are doing anything new?
Well, whether they did or not, they never really had the chance to get their fair share of exposure. And I feel when people say no to new groups, they're really saying yes to Black Lace and the way things always have been.
Is that because perhaps they're a little frightened of new things?
Well, I think everybody's comfortable in what they do, and why should it really be changed? And of course, that's a very stale situation.
Right, well, let's have another snatch of the Smiths and we'll see things that aren't old-fashioned then. This is really good stuff. Well, clearly the Smiths really are at the height of their success now. How far are you going to take them?
It's difficult. I mean, it gets to the stage where now we simply have to maintain things and prolong things, and that'll, I think, will be the test of our skill.
Aren't you really
Of course, they only lasted about another 2 years. They only lasted, I think, about 2 years in total. So, yeah, rather short-lived, unfortunately.
nervous the way that, I mean, a lot of bands who are mega bands now started off much the same way as you were, honest and trying to do something, and then it gets so big and you just become like the Police or something?
I don't think so. I think there's lots of groups who are very, very small, yet they have mega group attitudes. So I think it doesn't really matter what status you're at. You either have the attitude or you don't. And we certainly don't have that attitude.
Money and success and people badgering you from all sides isn't going to change you, is it?
I would think not. We don't really have much money, and we've bypassed opportunities to make a great deal of money.
Well, you and Johnny Marr got lots of money, haven't you? The other two poor bastards got cut out of everything.
So we haven't weakened so far. I mean, we've done really well with the bare essentials that we've had, so I think nothing else has to be proven, really.
Right, well, if I can introduce you to Lynn Birkbeck, our resident astrologer, he's actually been charting out your future. Would you like to tell Morrissey what it holds for him?
Well, how I see Morrissey as an individual, he's like a flag bearer.
You see, this guy sounds like what's his name? Schneider from The Day to Day. Sounds like, I can't remember his first name, Schneider. But just listen to that again. It sounds exactly like him sort of playing a boring politician.
Been charting out your future. Would you like to tell Morrissey what it holds for him?
Well, how I see Morrissey as an individual, he's like a flag bearer for future values which have yet to be developed. So he has to be a very unbending personality, very inflexible, so he isn't swayed from his course. About you saying earlier on about him being accused of being arrogant, in a way he has to be.
Yeah.
Because he's putting across a point, and he's naked and exposed in doing so. Because you're quite a shy person, aren't you?
Very.
Yeah. Very. But he has to put himself up front in the lights, you know. And people don't miss that point. They say, look, I'm arrogant, you know, which is like sour grapes, really. But it is so important what he, along with the Smiths, is putting across are these new values. And I think in the next couple of years, you are going to be tried. You are going to be forced to compromise, but you'll have to not compromise. Yet at the same time, maintain the essence of your vision, if you like. You know, I think some of your convictions probably do need reevaluating and adjusting.
Is this accurate? Why?
I don't know.
He was quite happy until he said something very slightly negative.
People tell me this every day. I'm not really sure what they mean. Perhaps we should, get them together and ask them to elaborate. I don't know.
I think it's a very subtle thing. I think it's to do with when you get on a hobby horse of changing this and that, right? One has to go into full throttle to prove your point. But there are certain bits that have to be adjusted. Nothing is simply black or white. And as a Gemini, you should know that. That you're going to have...
This guy could not be more vague, could he? Life is all grey areas, it's not black and white, and you might have to adjust certain things as you go along in the general scheme of things as the future unfolds before us. And we look forward to and look back to what has happened and, look at how we live our lives.
You're going to have to adjust a little bit.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Was that giving you the direction you're needing in life then, Morrissey?
Yes, it has. No, it hasn't.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed. Well, we're going to go out on White China tonight. Next week, Richard Jobson will be our guest and we'll be having music from the Armory Show. So here's White China.
Beautifully beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Moser of the Smithanos. He's likable. You can see that he's shy, but he is very arrogant, and I think it's probably the way he expresses himself more than and partly that he's slightly messianic. But very, very good. Well done, Morrissey, not dispelling the idea that he's arrogant in any way in that interview, but you still sort of got to love him. Apparently, I read a book. It's a brilliant book. I'll put it up here somewhere. There. About the hacienda, written. I think it's written by Peter Hook, as far as I remember. And of course, Morrissey was around, and the Smiths at the same time as Joy Division, and then New Order. And I think that there's a great quote. They didn't really like Morrissey. I don't think anyone really liked Morrissey that much. And Peter Hook, or somebody, said to Morrissey, "You're something like, you're just upset because you wish you'd died instead of Ian," which is pretty harsh, isn't it? Poor old Ian Curtis, who committed suicide. You know, the implication being, why did you have to survive and Ian Curtis died? Which is quite harsh. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you won't hate me for being nasty to Morrissey. And don't nobody go nowhere.